Good to know.
All right, we're going to go live. And we are live. All right, I'm not sure if everyone can see us just yet. Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
All right. Where is everyone joining us from? Drop it in the chat. Okay, Kathy said we can see and hear you. Perfect. All right. Awesome. So we'll give it another few minutes just to kick things off, and I think there's a little bit of a delay on our end. So, yeah, we'll give it a couple minutes here just before we get started. But we're happy that everyone's here joining us. Welcome. Hi, Kathy.
Excited to chat.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Some people are just kind of trickling in here.
Lovely. What's our number?
Yeah, different time zones as well, so we'll give everyone some time to jump in. Okay.
I hear it's supposed to be pretty nice in Ontario this week.
It is, and I've got this Friday off, so I'm going to go enjoy the sun. I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, first little bit of summer almost, feels like.
I know. And in BC, the weather's been nice for you guys too, right?
It was a little rainy this morning, but today it's pretty good, pretty nice. Excited to get out there.
All right. Kathy said that she knows that some teachers were pretty excited and they're going to try and replay it in their class tomorrow. So I think, we might have some people join us live tonight, but also some more viewers with the recorded version as well. All right. So we'll give it another minute just so people can come on in. All right. So for any of the high school students that are joining us today, what grade are you in? I'd love to know. I'm curious. Take me on a journey back to the good old days.
Yeah, really. Oh, it must be tough in high school right now too.
I know, with virtual learning
home.
For teachers and for students. Oh.
Tough times for everyone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Hopefully nearing an end though, so that's always good.
Hopefully.
All right, so maybe we'll kick things off, and then people can join us as they come in. And just so everyone knows, to kick things off, we'll have the chat open the entire time, so feel free to drop questions in there whenever you please, and we'll try and get to them as quick as we can, or wait till the Q&A period at the end to answer them. This session will be recorded, and we'll share that on the Techsploration YouTube channel, hopefully by tomorrow. And then Kim and I will leave our emails at the end of the session as well, if you want to continue the conversation with us or have more questions. We'd be happy to either take a call or email back and forth. So I'll add that. So there's no pressure if we don't get to your question. But without further ado, we'll just dive right in. So I am so happy to bring my friend Kim here to join us today. She is an environmental scientist at Golder, and they're an environmental consulting company, global, with over 14,000 employees. So I'm sure Kim's making some pretty decent impact, but we'll dive into her work a bit later. So, most of our audience here today are high school students, so we figured why not take you all on a journey back to the good old days where it all started in high school. So, Kim, maybe you can kind of tell us about your high school experience and what life was like for you in high school.
For sure. High school seems like forever ago. A very interesting time in life, for sure. Lots of opportunity ahead of you. I definitely was nerdy. I was always super excited to get that math textbook at the beginning of the semester. I definitely didn't try as hard as I probably should have. But here I am. It worked out eventually. Yeah, I really enjoyed learning. I still do. So classes were interesting for the most part. I definitely found myself gravitating more towards science and math. I didn't really take many business courses, which now I'm kind of regretting a little bit. It's good things come from those courses, kind of essential knowledge for being an adult. Yeah, I didn't really have a career path in mind as well. I always, in the back of my mind, wanted to be a teacher. So that was something on my mind, but I was just taking the courses as they came to me and got out of there, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, here you are teaching and hopefully inspiring some young bright minds. So that's awesome. And it's also, I think, a little bit comforting, knowing that you didn't have that path carved out for you at such a young age, right? Like that was something that it was a journey for you. So in high school, were you involved in anything like related to science? No, that came later on in your life. Yeah.
Not really. I mean, I had quite a few hobbies, but there was none that were really science related. I played sports. I was really into history and drama. I actually was a huge play enthusiast. And then at my high school, there weren't many clubs for different topics in science. They had a robotics club, but that was about it in that kind of science technology world. So science was strictly in the classroom.
Okay, so then the big question, when did you realize that you wanted to go into science, or did you kind of just fall into it?
I definitely had like a eureka moment for sure, where I thought to myself, hey, I think I'm kind of good at this. And I've always had a knack for trying to figure out how things work, whether it's engineering or biology or chemistry. I've always really enjoyed kind of breaking things down and understanding how they work. And then when I started taking chemistry and biology, I started getting more and more fascinated with the human body, ecosystems, how there are so many moving parts in our bodies, on our planet, that just kind of seamlessly work together. So I was very fascinated by that and figured I didn't have a career in mind, but there's lots and lots of careers having to do with both of those fields. So it's pretty funny. I remember I had studied really hard for this biology test, and there was a bonus question. Sorry for the sirens. There was a bonus question, and it was like a really, really specific question about DNA. And I had studied it so hard, and I knew the answer, and it was an empowering moment. I was like, maybe this is what I meant to do.
And that might have been your aha moment.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine that some of the audience here might be kind of later on in their high school stages. Love the glass. Very relevant.
I like to think that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm thinking, a lot of these young girls are probably at that stage in their high school journey of, what's next for me? What does post-secondary look like for me? And so for you, what did that decision making look like? And how did you kind of ultimately decide to get into science and choose Carleton?
For sure. It helped that I had a really awesome biology teacher in grade 12. She was incredible. She had such a passion and energy for science and made every lesson interesting. So maybe that's where some of my interest stems from. But when I told her that I was thinking about doing post-secondary, going to university, I wasn't sure what science specialty I wanted. And she told me that she did biochemistry at Queen's. And so she did biochemistry at Queen's. And I thought, hey, that's kind of a perfect overlap of these two fields that I'm pretty interested in, chemistry and biology. So I applied to a bunch of different schools. So in the GTA, because that's where I'm from, and then also in Ottawa, Carleton. And when I visited Carleton, it is a stunning campus, and they have quite a few nice chemistry labs, which I was definitely attracted to. And that's kind of what led me there. I also got a scholarship for Carleton, so that also was a driving factor.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you mentioned one teacher in high school. Did you have any other mentors or anyone else in your life, whether it's your parents or friends, that helped you kind of, or maybe guided you to make that decision? I'm curious because I know there's a lot of influence in taking big life decisions, life-altering decisions, right?
Sure.
So, I'm curious.
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of encouragement from my family and my friends to kind of pursue this thing that I was good at. But one of my older sisters, she actually did an undergrad in biochem as well, but she kind of gravitated towards more environmental sciences, whereas I went to chemistry. But she was super supportive and kind of the nerd that I was aspiring to be. So definitely having her around, encouraging me even to pursue something that, even though it's challenging, if you put in the effort and you want it, you might as well go for it. So she was critical with that big decision. And yeah, teachers, my parents have always just been very supportive no matter what. So that's.
And for, the young woman here today, is there somewhere you might be able to point them or, help provide guidance if they're looking for mentors in the space or, obviously you now, but, where could you lead them?
I find teachers were always very helpful. I actually reached out to a guidance counselor when I was struggling with what I wanted to do, and just having someone to talk to and kind of put my thoughts into words helped me figure out what it was that I wanted to do. But finding a mentor, in my mind, it's something that you kind of stumble upon. A lot of people can be mentors, people with more expertise in a topic than you can help you and guide you in a general direction. But parents, neighbors, friends, I think having an openness and a willingness to learn is kind of critical there.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I think that it is kind of funny how often for mentors you really do stumble upon them. Like one thing leads to another, which is, it's pretty cool how that works. And you can definitely seek out mentors for sure. And there's groups online that you can get involved in. And I know that guidance counselors and teachers are definitely usually the go-tos. And so,
for sure.
Yeah.
Networking has also been a really big thing for me, especially in university, going to conferences and meeting alumni through alumni mixers was a good way of meeting people who had studied at the same school, did the same courses as me, and kind of being able to see what path they chose and what career they have now, what they were able to get with a degree. it's definitely helpful for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And so I met you in university, not because we're in the same program, but I'm grateful that our paths crossed. And so your story is kind of interesting in how you landed, some summer positions and the experience that you had at Carleton within your program. So I'd love for you to share a bit of that, because I know it's a little bit serendipitous almost, with the jobs that you landed. So I'd love for you to share more about that.
For sure. So at Carleton, they do something called lab tours, where you can bounce from lab to lab, meet the professors, meet the students, and learn about the research that's going on at Carleton and the specific labs that you're interested in. So I did the lab tour, and there was one lab that was really cool. The students that worked in the lab were really nice, and they just had a really strong, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Their research goal was really interesting, and it had a very big impact on the environment. So that kind of spoke to me. So I reached out. If you don't ask, there's no chance that you will get something that you want. So I reached out and I asked if they needed help in the lab. I would volunteer. I didn't need to get paid. And the supervisor, he told me that there's student research internships for the summertime. If you apply, Carleton has a lot of these programs that they offer for students. So I applied. I didn't actually get it, but they still needed the help. So I was hired on, and then I worked in that lab for a couple of years and got a lot of really, really good skills hands-on. As well, I find it really helped for courses, being able to physically apply something versus just staring at a sheet of paper with formulas. It definitely helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from that, though, one of your professors, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong with that, one of the professors you had in university led to summer opportunity as well, or career opportunity, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did a MyTax internship, which was a great way of working with the industry while still doing research. So that kind of bridged the gap to see what science would be like in the industry versus what I was used to, which was just science and academia, which was very competitive. And the industry was definitely slightly different, a bit more push for products and whatnot. So that was definitely great, a good resume builder. And then I was introduced to a woman who actually works at Golder, and she has a very similar job that I got. She did the same kind of path, and that's how I got to Golder. So that networking led me there.
Yeah.
Here.
And it's funny how it kind of works out like that. And I know I've had a couple of similar experience as well. Like connecting with professors, and yes, there's the job boards on campus sometimes that definitely help you find those summer opportunities. But it ultimately does kind of often boil down to who you know, and then creating the opportunities for yourself. So when and wherever you can, connecting with people, and it doesn't have to feel forceful when you're trying to network. It really can just be reaching out for some advice or connecting with people and finding some common ground. So often that leads to some pretty unreal opportunities. So
for sure,
that's cool.
And great conversations. And yeah,
it's cool that you shared that. And I know that you recently graduated. It was a long post-secondary journey, and congratulations on graduation. And you landed your first job out of school at Golder,
definitely,
of all places. And I actually vividly remember Kim talking to me maybe a year before she had actually landed this job. She kind of painted her future, and it was, I need to move to BC. It's going to happen. And there's this company, Golder, here's what they do. I feel it. It's going to come. And here we are. It came. And she loves her life. So Dive into that, and I'd love to have you share more about that journey and your experience at Golder. And I'm just going to plug in my computer as a side note, so excuse me.
Of course. Yeah. We'll just talk away. I definitely put a plan in motion. I knew a girl who worked in my lab who had similar training as me. She got the job at Golder and told me about how incredible the company was. So I thought, hey, maybe I could try that as well. And the more research that I did into jobs, the pros and cons were for working at Golder were starting to the pros, were starting to build up. Mm-hmm. So the stars kind of aligned for me there. With COVID, I had that internship, which got pushed back and the deadlines were shifting, and Golder actually was hiring in November, and then they were also hiring in the beginning of February. Mm-hmm. And I was finishing my master's in December. So I had the interview. I was terrified because it was something that I wanted so bad. As you know, I have been thinking and talking about it for a long time. And when I finally got that offer of employment, it was a culmination of really hard work, mm-hmm. dedication, believing in myself almost. I really did want it, and so it that helped for sure.
Yeah, no, I believe it, and I saw it. We have a question.
I bet you remember that
actually. So a question came in. What do you find most interesting about your job?
About my job? I think it's really interesting that it's a whole side of science that I never really knew existed. So I work in a mining division, and mines have permits that specify how much they're allowed to put into the environment without having an impact on the ecosystems and wildlife health, human health, which I never really knew. And so diving into that, they do something called baseline assessments. So if they want to open up a mine, they will go there before the mine's open, collect, vegetation, soil samples, and they'll monitor the chemistries and the ratios of all these different species, and so that they have that baseline. And then when they open up the mine, you can see how the mine is influencing that receiving environment around it. And I think that is so cool. It makes so much sense, of course, and it's a really good way to kind of monitor that activity. Mining isn't the cleanest of industries, but knowing that there are plans in place to help minimize that impact, I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see the joy on your face. Yeah, I'll just, trying not to hide it. Yeah. I'll just see if there's any other questions. Okay, I think we're all good for questions. So, we've kind of, I guess at a very high level, kind of relived your journey to where you are now. What do you feel is next for you? Like where do you think you can go with the role that you're in, or maybe it's a new role within the mining industry? Where do you see yourself going?
Well, I've only worked here for 3 months, so I can imagine I'm going to be doing the same thing for the next little bit. But Golder's great because they have lots of room for advancement. So right now I'm the lowest entry-level position, so I'll get to do lots of field work, and I'll do very minimal interaction with clients. But as I progress and I make more contacts and get better at my job, I will be able to move up. Yeah. And as a global company, there's lots of places that I could travel to, work at different branches, which would be awesome. But I can see myself working for Golder for a while. A lot of the people I work with have worked there for a long time, and they speak very, very highly. of the company. It's an employee-owned company, so they know how to treat their employees well, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and that's the cool thing with global organizations as well. Like when they are that big, you have a lot of opportunity for travel and for, if you want to try something new or dive into a different, department, there's new opportunities. So you're kind of in a really perfect storm of a place to really explore and learn more. So that's really awesome. We do have
who
another
knew I would end
question.
here?
Yeah. Does environmental science help animals?
Definitely. I like to think so. I hope so. uh, so there's some programs that they do called surveys where they go into the environment and they are doing a hike essentially, and they count how many moose they see, they count how many ducks, and it's all part of a larger monitoring plan to make sure that there's no contamination or something in the environment that's affecting that wildlife. That's how environmental science in my position relates to animals and wildlife. But there's definitely a larger picture there for environmental science and the impact that humans have on the environment and thus animals.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good answer. And I'm curious because I know you mentioned you're in mining, but what other departments does Golder have? Just out of curiosity, because I'm sure when you're talking about the environment, you're only touching one tiny sliver when you talk about mining.
For sure. Yeah, so the department I work for is mine, water, and the environment. So we cover a lot of mining activities, but we also do just general environmental consulting. But there's also construction, so consulting about where to build, the impact that digging up something would have, I guess. There's also industrial hygiene, and there's probably a few more, but I'm not 100% familiar with them just yet.
Yeah, lots to learn still with 3 months under your belt, but it's cool. It's cool because I feel like that's something that not a lot of us think about. Obviously we know a lot of the things we do have an environmental impact, but when you think about companies taking on massive projects, it's cool to think that Golder is someone that they hire to take into account the impact that they're having with these projects or the work that they're doing. And beyond mining, I'm sure there's so much more. So that's it's really cool. We do have another question. Do you have any advice for high school students having a hard time getting interested in science?
That's a good question. There's a lot of really cool YouTube videos. It's definitely challenging because science itself is challenging. So keeping your attention on, certain topics can be difficult. I think finding something that you're really interested in with science is probably the best way to kind of keep yourself interested in it. Maybe starting at the kind of basics and, say you really like plants. Well, then you start at the very, very simple mechanism of, okay, I water it, it grows, and then kind of taking it step by step. Because I definitely know that it's challenging and there's definitely parts of science that I do not really have an interest in because either it's way too complicated or it's just not something that interests me, like chemistry or environmental science.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think, when I think back to my experience in high school, when I was studying, physics, biology, and chemistry, it's sometimes you have this idea that you have to be interested in everything, and that's not always the case. Like, I know for me, I was more interested in physics and chemistry, and so when I was thinking about, what's next for me, or what could this lead to, I looked at programs that didn't necessarily need biology, but put an emphasis on physics. So like industrial design, for example. And so there's ways to kind of also get around those areas that you might not be interested in. Obviously, for mandatory courses, sometimes it's just kind of a given. You have to power through it, and it's, you know, you're not going to love everything, but there's ways to kind of mold some of those interests into future career paths. So,
sure. And definitely finding ways that science can apply in real life is huge. I know physics was always very difficult for me, but actually putting it into motion directly in front of me was very helpful.
Yeah, and I think it's tough because I think at such a young age it's so hard to get exposure or experience in those fields, but I think that's the value of having co-op opportunities, or you know, having mentors that are currently living you know, through that career, because you can kind of get a little bit more exposure than you get sometimes from a classroom too. So
Definitely.
sometimes that work experience can almost bring out an interest that you didn't know you had. So that's kind of exciting. And I wanted to ask you, I know we have only a couple minutes left, but with an audience of young, bright leaders, what kind of advice could you leave them with? Or pointers, you know,
Right.
you could go back and say, oh, young Kim, if only you.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely want to tell myself to, you know, make this decision for yourself. Don't make it because your friends are doing science or your friends are interested in art. Do something that's going to make you happy in the long run. Because if you go to university or college or any other process of having a career, you're going to be focusing on that topic a lot. And if you don't enjoy it, you're just going to be kind of miserable, and that's not worth it. So yes, it's a big decision. But I guess the second part of it is, as you get older, you're going to start to have different interests, and as you learn more, you're going to evolve and develop other interests and side interests. So the choice that you're making isn't going to be permanent. It's not set in stone that you're going to be a doctor if you take biology. You know, that there's always going to be room for growth, and deciding that it's not for you isn't easy, but it's what's going to make you happy, then you might as well.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to make that change, for sure.
I definitely second that advice. And even when, you know, you feel like you sometimes have it all figured out and you push forward along that path, sometimes change comes along, and it's okay to kind of almost feel that resistance, but your gut always knows best. So it's a fun journey, but and I'll yes, Kathy, this has been so valuable. Thank you, Kathy. All right, well, I think we're closing up on 6:30, but we can stick around for a couple minutes to see if there's any other questions. And I'll leave my email here if anyone wants to just reach out after the call. If we missed anything, feel free to contact. And I can also add Kim's email as well.
Please do. Yeah, this is an amazing program. So thanks to Techsploration for hosting, and Olivia for hosting. Yes. I think this is a really constructive process for high school students, because you're learning kind of the higher level of things, whereas you don't really know how many jobs are out there and all the different career paths that can come from certain topics. So I think kind of seeing where people end up after making those decisions is very awesome.
I know, and it's fun for me hearing about the journey, I think, because it's almost a little bit more humbling than, you know, just diving into where you are now. Like, it's interesting because it's always such a windy road too. So thank you once again for sharing your story, Kim. And I'll just leave your email here for anyone who wants to reach out to you. It's Kim McDonald 23@gmail.com, and that's her personal email. So feel free to reach out, poke her. And,
please do. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation about science, give any advice that I can, just in general. So
yes. And before we go, there is another question. What's your favorite thing about what you do?
My favorite thing,
like the reason you wake up and you're excited.
I really like the team aspect. So I work on a team, and everybody has kind of a different specialty, a different background, a different story of how they got here. And so we collaborate on projects within our team, within other teams, and I'm constantly learning. And I don't have to be the expert at everything, which is really awesome. That was definitely something that was always really hard for me to admit, is that I didn't know something, of course. So having a team aspect is really rewarding as well, because I feel I'm growing and learning lots, but also get to share my kind of expertise every now and then.
I love that. And I also love the line about not having to be the expert. You know, I think a lot of us aren't always, really, we're never an expert, right? Because we're continuously learning. So that is awesome.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. That is huge.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I wish old Olivia would have asked a lot more questions. That's for sure. So register for the next Techsploration Ontario event on June 3rd. I believe that Jenna has left the link there, so feel free to check that out. And we'll see you all next week. On the 19th, we have Cassia, who is in cybersecurity, so that'll be a fun chat as well. And if you have any suggestions for specific fields that you'd like to learn more about, or specific guests that you'd love to have on here, feel free to also shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to try and make that happen. And if we don't have any other questions, I think we'll just go ahead and wrap up for tonight. But thank you all for coming, and I hope that we helped answer some of your questions or gave you some glimpse of guidance, if we could. And we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.